Second example from 6-2, estimating with percents. We have 3 really important vocab words here that you have to pay attention to. Here is the problem today. My wife took me out to eat at Champs. The total bill at Champs was $31.09, not including the tax and tip. Your job is to estimate the final cost for Mrs. Pottinger since she took me out to eat. You do need to know that we tip at 15%, and you do need to know that we are being taxed at 7.5%, which isn't entirely accurate on both ends. But that's what we're going to go with for this problem. And then the problem that we talked about, or the part you're figuring out, is what does tip the tax means? Something that I think you should be able to figure out quickly. We're using compatables. We're using benchmarks to get an estimate. We're not doing an actual answer. Good luck. All right, to solve the problem, first of all, I need to know that if I'm tipping the tax, I'm not worrying about the tip until after I figure out what the tax is with the final cost. Are you guys okay with that? So if I'm tipping the tax, I know that my tax is 7.5%. And I know that I have to use $31.09 and 7.5% in order to get my total cost with tax. Yes, no? And then after I'm done with that, then I have to tip the tax, which is I'm tipping the tax, which was already added onto my bill. How many of you figured that out? Because we talked about figuring that out. Okay, so let's do this thing. I have $31.09. I'm going to actually write down, because I like to write everything down. I have $31.09, and I have 7.5%. I need to get some compatables there. My compatables, the ones that I went with, and now you say, Mr. Pottinger, you went a long way down. I'm going to go with $30, and I'm going to go with 7.5%. I'm going to say 7.5% is a compatible for me. Because I know 10% is one of my favorite compatables. I know half of 10% is 5%, which I'm okay with dealing with. But then 7.5% is right smack dab in the middle of those two. So I'm going to deal with that, and I'll show you how that works in a second here. So I have $30 at 7.5%. I know that 10% of $30 is what? 3. So here is my thinking. When I add these together, I have got 30 and 10%, which equals what? Everybody? $3, right? Is my tax going to be $3? No, because 7.5% is a quarter less than that. A quarter of the percentage of the total percentage of 10%. So I know that 5% is what? So 30% or 30 and 5% is going to be what? $1.50. I have to go right smack dab in the middle of that, right? So what is in the middle of $3 and $1.50, everybody? $2.25. Now I'm dealing with quarters here, but I can deal with quarters. So in my head, I knew that I was going to pay a tax of about $2.25. I could do that in my head. So my tax is $2.25. Okay? Now I need to add that to my total cost, which was what? $31.09, right? So I have $31.09, and now I have to get some more compatible. So I have $31.09, and I have $2.25. What are my compatibles going to be? What do you think, Pranav? 31 is a compatible plus what? $2.25. Can you do that in your head, you guys? Yeah. So now I have $33.25. So with tax, I have $33.25. Again, I'm putting this all in my head. There's a lot of numbers going on in my head here. And now I got to tip 15%. And am I tipping the tax now? Yeah. Is the tax part of the total? Yeah. Would I be tipping the tax plus whatever $31, whatever my total was, right? Yeah. So tipping the tax means you're tipping, obviously, the total plus the tax. So I'm tipping the tax, and I've got $33.25. So now my new numbers would be $33.25 and 15%. Yes, no? Yeah. Compatibles, $33.25, $33.25, $33.25, and 15%. I'm going to use $33 as a compatible, and I'm going to use, what do you think? 15%, right? So here's my thinking here. If I'm using 15%, I know that 10% is a really easy number to deal with. So if I have $33 and 10%, what do I have? $3.30. What is half of $3.30? Because I got to use 33 and 5%. I can do that in my head. It's about $1.65. So I'm thinking, okay, $1.65 and $3.30. I'm about $4. $3.30 and $1.65. That bring me to about $4.
Yeah.
See how I did that? It actually isn't totally $4. It's I think $4.95. So actually 5. I mean to say, sorry. So I'm at $5, right? So if I add $5 to my $33.25, how much am I paying? $38.25 or about $38. That is a huge problem. I don't know that I'm even going to give you a test problem like that. Okay, but it was a whole bunch of different compatibles going on in my head at one time. Yes, no, makes sense?
Yes.
Your assignments are not going to be that difficult, but I wanted to show you that this is, I think, what you will be doing in your life very soon, if not already, a lot of you. So when you go out to eat with your mom and dad at the restaurant, you're going to get the bill. You're going to say, can I see that, please? And in Hennepin County, which is where most of you are going to be eating, since that's where we live, I would calculate about 7.5%. I would calculate about a 20% tip. See if you can figure out how much your parents should leave. However, is the receipt going to already have the tax in there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to throw the tax at you anyways. Questions on this? Tate.
Would you accept an answer of 37.5?
37.50 depends on how you did it, but probably.
Why?
There's a lot of different ways to get to this one. Probably wasn't, again, this problem is a little bit more difficult than any of the other problems you're going to get, but it's just an example of what you'll be doing. How many of you felt like you followed it? Raise your hand.